Alright, this is our last of our comma videos. And for this video, we really have just a series of situations where we'd use a comma. And they're pretty easy to understand once you have seen them. There's not a lot of deep critical thinking, not like when you had to have that issue of essential versus non-essential. These are more situational, so they should be pretty easy to remember. The first one is using commas with direct quotes. We're going to use our commas to set off our quote, the part that is direct dialogue, from the rest of the sentence. So in this example, Ted said, "Let's work on our posters now." We would put the comma separating the Ted said part, that's the dialogue tag, from the actual dialogue. "Let's work on our poster now." And in the second example, "Maybe later," replied Seth. "I'm about to leave." We actually have two commas because we separate both of those pieces of dialogue from the dialogue tag, which is the part that's replied Seth. Alright, we use commas with dates. Now usually a date will have several different parts. It'll have days, months, and years. And when it does have all three parts, day, month, and year, then you need to put a comma to separate the item. On June 12th, 2009, I celebrated my birthday. So I would put the comma between 12 and the year. So I would put the comma when I have all three of those elements. But not between the month and the day, but between the day and the year. But if I only have the month and the year, I wouldn't have to have the comma there. Like in this example, she will receive her award in May 2014. I don't have to have the comma between May and 14 just because there's only two items there. Okay, I'm going to use commas with geographical names as well. Okay, I'm going to use a comma when the geographical name is made up of a city and a state. Okay, except when the state ends a sentence. So, they lived in Albany, New York for several years and then moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico. So I have a comma between Albany and New York. I will always have that between city and state. And then if my state does not end the sentence, I will put a comma after the state as well. So they lived in Albany, comma, New York, comma, for several years. But at the second clause here, then they moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico. I would still put the comma separating Santa Fe from New Mexico, but I wouldn't have a comma at the end. It would be weird for there to be New Mexico, comma, and then period. That wouldn't make sense. That would have double punctuation. Okay. Next, I'm going to use commas and numbers, and there's a couple of different rules for using commas and numbers. When I have a large number with more than 3 digits, okay, I'm going to count from the right and add a comma to the left of every third digit, which seems complicated, but it's really not. Okay, if I have 3,056, okay, if I had a number like that, I would have the comma would go before the thousands place, basically, in that one. In my second example 726,434, again, I count over 3 places, then I put my first comma. So my first comma goes before my thousands place. Okay. In a larger number, like 1,256,789, my second comma will go after my next 3 digits. So my first comma is before the thousands, my 5 gives me the 10,000s, my 2 there gives me my 100,000s, and then I put the comma before the millions digit. Okay? Now, just like when you have numbers in a series, okay, it's just like anything else. When you have 3 or more in a series, you put a comma between them. Okay? So you use a comma with 3 or more numbers written in a series. Players 3, 4, and 7 scored a goal. So just like our previous rule about series, that applies also when you have a number. Okay? But you would not use a comma with these situations of numbers. You don't use a comma when you have zip codes because we really treat that as all one number. You don't use a comma when you have telephone numbers. We use a hyphen for that. You do not use numbers, use commas when you have a page number, like on page 421. We wouldn't put a comma there. And you do not use whenever you have a year. Okay, it wouldn't be 2,0113. It would just be 2013 without the comma there. And we do not use commas whenever we're listing the number of an address, like 5045 Oak Street. Okay, I would not have 5,045 Oak Street. Okay? So those are just a couple of examples with numbers of when you would and would not use commas. Alright, now addresses can be a little bit tricky, and it really boils down to how are you writing the address. Okay, if you are writing the address as just basically part of a letter or part of a normal sentence, you would use a comma after each item in the address as long as it was made up of at least 2 or more parts. So please write to Audrey Cummings, comma, 13 Irving Road, comma, Chicago, Illinois, 66013. You would, if that was part of just a normal sentence, you would put the comma after the name, and then another comma separating 13 Irving Road, because that's all one thing, that's the street address, and then the normal comma between city and state. However, there is an exception to that. If I'm writing my address on an envelope, or like at the top of the letter, like it's a business letter, a lot of times you put the address of who you're sending it to, then you would not use a comma between those elements. So I wouldn't write Addie Foster, comma, and then start a new line and write 123 Oak Street and then write another comma. So I wouldn't do that, but I would still use a comma between the city and the state, because that part never changes. Okay? And then the last rule, and that one I think you probably all already know, is that you use a comma after the greeting and after the closing of a letter. So, Dear Addie, and then comma, then I go into my letter. And then at the end of the letter, best wishes or sincerely or whatever, and then comma, and then whoever you're writing it to.